When I first saw Outpost K-17 through the fogged-up window of the transport truck, it didn't look like any active military base I'd imagined. No guards standing tall with rifles. No buzz of vehicles or radio chatter. Just a rectangle of concrete squatting in a valley of white snow and black pine trees, half buried under years of neglect. A chain-link fence surrounded it like a prison yard, and beyond that, nothing but fog and wind. The driver didn't talk much. He just stopped by the rusted front gate, tossed my duffel bag onto the slush and muttered, "Good luck." Then he drove off like he was escaping something. I watched his taillights fade into the mist until even the sound of the engine died. Inside the gate, I saw a wooden sign that once read, "Property of the U.S. Army." Most of the letters peeled off. Someone had spray-painted "Keep Clean" over it in red. I pulled my jacket tighter. My name tag still felt too new. Too bright for a place like this. Custodian, Contractor ID 84. It sounded official enough, but the truth was I'd taken the job out of desperation. I'd been laid off for months, broke and living off stale cereal. The hiring ad said remote facility work, good pay, minimal supervision. No mention of how remote. A soldier met me at the front door. A tall guy in a wrinkled uniform with the kind of tired eyes you get from seeing too much. His name tag read Vasquez. "Custodian?" he asked flatly. "Yeah, first day." He nodded once. "Follow me." Inside, the base was worse. Paint peeled like skin from the walls. The fluorescent lights flickered every few seconds, giving the hallways a stuttered heartbeat. My boots echoed too loudly on the concrete floor. It didn't smell like chemicals or oil like a normal base, just old dust and something faintly metallic, like rust or dried blood. Vasquez led me through 2 security doors, each buzzing before unlocking. Past the second one, the air changed, colder, heavier. "Command says you'll stick to lower levels for now," he said. "We don't use the top floors much." "How many floors are there?" "3, he said, almost whispering it, then added, "Technically." He dropped me off in a small maintenance room filled with cleaning supplies that looked decades old. A clipboard hung by the door. Custodial rules, I skimmed it. Work between, DU 600-300, only 2 never enter a restricted zone without. Escort 3 report all spills to security. Immediately. Do not touch the observation. Terminal spy do not sweep the 3rd floor. I blinked. Is this a joke? Vasquez didn't smile. "Just follow the rules, all right?" He handed me a faded key ring and left without another word. The silence that followed was strange, thick enough to feel. I could hear the base breathing, air flowing through old vents, the distant hum of generators below. I started my shift mostly cleaning the 1st floor, cafeteria, corridors, and an old office labeled Storage A. Dust was everywhere, as if no one had worked here in months. But it wasn't empty. Every now and then, I'd catch a door clicking shut somewhere far down the hall. Once, I saw a soldier standing motionless in front of a vending machine, staring at it like he'd forgotten why he was there. When I called out, he turned, nodded, and walked away. His boots left no prints in the dust. Around 10 p.m., I took a break near a cracked window overlooking the yard. The fog outside hadn't lifted once all day. No stars, no sky, just a dull gray glow pressing against the glass. That's when I heard it, the faint sound of a broom sweeping somewhere above me. It was rhythmic, calm, like someone was brushing dust back and forth along a long hallway. I froze, thinking maybe another custodian was still working. But the rule sheet came back to mind. Do not sweep the 3rd floor. Maybe they meant something else, some kind of safety hazard, asbestos, whatever. Still, the sound felt wrong. Every time I moved, it stopped. When I held still, it started again. I decided to check in with the supervisor before leaving. His office was at the end of the 1st floor corridor, past a row of dark storage rooms. I knocked twice. "Enter," a voice said. The man inside looked too old for this kind of post. Gray buzz cut, stiff uniform, eyes sharp as broken glass. His nameplate read Captain Rowe. He didn't look up from his paperwork. "You the new custodian?" "Yes, sir. Just finished my rounds." "Good." He signed something, then looked at me for the first time. "Any issues?" "Not really, just..." I hesitated. "I heard someone sweeping upstairs." His expression didn't change. "There's no one upstairs. Maybe another contractor?" He folded his hands slowly. "Listen carefully. The 3rd floor is off limits. If you value this job, you'll stay where you're assigned. Understood? Yes, sir. He leaned forward slightly. And don't ask about it again. I nodded and left, but his tone stayed with me. On the way back to the maintenance room, I passed a sign pointing toward the stairwell. The arrow for level 3 had been scratched out so violently the paint chipped around it. By the time I reached my quarters, the sweeping had stopped. The vents hummed steady again. I sat on my bunk, listening to the faint metal groans of the building settling into the cold night. I told myself it was just nerves, that every new job feels off at first. But deep down, I knew that sound hadn't come from any normal janitor. The rhythm had been too perfect, too patient, and when I closed my eyes, I could still hear it faintly, back and forth, slow and steady, echoing from a floor no one was supposed to touch. The next morning, the intercom's static buzz woke me before dawn. Custodian 84, report to maintenance room, the voice said, monotone and clipped. I rubbed my eyes, still half asleep, and looked around the dorm. The walls were concrete, the kind painted decades ago in a greenish gray that never looked clean no matter how much you scrubbed. A single bulb swung from a frayed wire above my bed. It flickered when the generator shifted power. I pulled on my jacket and stepped into the corridor. The air was colder than yesterday. My breath fogged as I passed by windows coated in frost from the inside. Somewhere far below, a machine hummed. Steady, mechanical, like a heart buried under metal. The maintenance room smelled like bleach and old paper. My cleaning cart was still there, but the mop water had turned a strange yellow overnight. I dumped it, refilled it, and checked my supply list. Cafeteria, medical bay, lower dorms, storage hall, all first and second floor areas. The third floor section was crossed out in thick red marker. I started with the cafeteria. The place could have fed hundreds once, but now it was just a dozen soldiers sitting far apart, eating in silence. Their trays clattered softly. A radio on the counter played faintly. Not music, just static with a voice buried deep in it like someone trying to talk from underwater. "Morning," I said to one soldier while wiping tables. He barely looked up. "Don't bother saying that here." "Why?" He just shrugged and kept eating. His hand was trembling like he hadn't slept in days. By noon, I moved to the medical bay. Half the lights were out. Cabinets full of syringes, sealed bags of powder, and an old defibrillator sat on a dusty counter. The air smelled faintly metallic again, like old coins and bleach. In one of the rooms, I found a cracked observation mirror with the words "Don't sweep" etched faintly across it, backwards from the other side. My hand brushed the glass, and for a moment, it felt warm, like someone's palm had just been pressed there. I jerked back, heart thudding. When I asked one of the medics about it, she gave me this look, not fear exactly, more like warning. "Don't mess with anything from upstairs," she said. "If you see dust falling through the vents, just leave it. That's not your job." "What's up there anyway?" She hesitated. "It's not what's up there. It's what doesn't stay there." That line stuck with me for the rest of the day. By the time evening came, the corridors had emptied. The soldiers vanished into their quarters, leaving the whole base eerily quiet except for the endless hum of ventilation. The walls seemed to pulse faintly when you stared long enough, like they were breathing with the machinery. I rolled my cart toward the second-floor stairwell to finish the last section, a long hall of storage units labeled alphabetically. Most were locked. The light above each door flickered on and off in rhythm, like the heartbeat of the building itself. Halfway down the hall, I heard it again, that same slow shh, shh, shh sound of a broom brushing against a hard floor. Above me this time, perfectly in sync with my own pace. Every few steps I stopped, and so did it. Every time I moved again, it resumed. The ceiling tiles above one of the doors quivered, dust drifting down like gray snow. My throat went dry. I tried convincing myself it was the ventilation, but the pattern was too human. I stood there, mop handle clenched, waiting. The sweeping stopped again. Silence filled the hallway like pressure. Then something soft, 3 distinct taps on the ceiling directly over my head. I backed away slowly, staring up. The light above me flickered, then burst, showering me with tiny sparks. Screw this, I thought. I wheeled my cart back toward the maintenance room, my footsteps echoing too loud. As I turned the corner, someone was standing in the hallway. Another custodian, same uniform as mine, but older, with deep bags under his eyes. "First week?" he asked, voice low. "Yeah," he nodded. "You'll get used to it. Just don't work past midnight. Why not?" He looked over his shoulder, then leaned closer. The building gets active after that, especially near the vents. Before I could ask what he meant, he walked off toward the elevator, except the elevator doors didn't open. He just kept walking, straight into the metal panel like it wasn't there, and vanished. The hall lights flickered once more, and the doors were suddenly shut again. I didn't move for almost a full minute. By the time I returned to the maintenance room, it was nearly 11 p.m. I wrote my end-of-shift report like nothing happened, just to feel normal. But when I closed the cabinet where we keep the brooms, I noticed something strange. One was missing. The broom that had been hanging on the far right hook, marked with a tag reading Floor 3 Use Only, was gone. The dust beneath it was disturbed, footprints leading toward the hallway door. I stared at the empty hook for a long time. Then I shut the light off and left, but not before locking the door twice. As I walked back to my bunk, I heard faint sweeping again, this time coming through the ventilation duct right above my bed. I didn't sleep that night. By the third day, the outpost had already started feeling like a living thing, a machine that inhaled cold air and exhaled dread. The pipes clanged like bones shifting inside its ribs. Every corridor hummed with low vibrations that you could feel in your teeth if you stood still long enough. That morning, the power flickered twice before stabilizing. I took it as a bad sign. The base didn't handle flickers well. The lights would dim for a moment, and everyone, even the soldiers, would stop talking until they came back on. Like they were waiting for something to wake up in the dark. I had new instructions. Deep clean the lower hallways and check the vents for blockages. The air filtration system was reportedly malfunctioning, and apparently custodial support meant crawling through ducts filled with dust and dead air. I started near the north wing, where the ceiling vents rattled every few minutes. As I climbed the ladder, I heard it, faint at first, almost like a radio whisper. Jan. I froze. It sounded like someone saying my name. Hello? No answer. Just a soft scraping sound like fabric dragging against metal. I climbed down fast and stood there listening. The vent above me was vibrating slightly. When I pressed my hand against the metal, the cold bit through my glove. Then I felt it. The faintest pulse, like a heartbeat coming from inside the duct. I told myself it was just air pressure, but that didn't explain the voice. Later, while scrubbing the walls near the mess corridor, I heard it again. This time it was clearer, a whispering tone broken by static. Don't clean what's already clean. My whole body went cold. The vents stretched through the entire building, weaving above every floor like veins. I followed the sound down the hall, each vent I passed carrying that faint, distorted whisper. When I reached the end of the corridor, it stopped. Dead silence. That's when I noticed something weird. The vents above the third-floor stairwell were spotless. Not a speck of dust, not a cobweb in sight. Every other vent in the building was thick with grime, but they looked freshly polished. I didn't even have a reason to be near the third-floor gate, but curiosity pulled me closer. The padlock was still there, gleaming under the dim light. Someone had oiled it recently. The metal was too clean. The moment I leaned closer, the whisper came again, directly through the vent above my head. Keep it clean. I backed off so fast I almost slipped on the wet floor. My mop clattered against the wall, echoing through the empty corridor. When I went to report the sound to maintenance, the guy at the desk, a skinny tech with dark circles under his eyes, barely looked up. You heard the vents? He asked flatly. Yeah, I said. Sounded like someone talking. He sighed. They all do eventually. What's that supposed to mean? He shrugged. Pressure differentials or ghosts. Take your pick. He said it half joking, but his hands were trembling when he reached for his coffee. By the time my shift ended, I'd convinced myself I was just tired. The base was quiet again. The light stopped flickering. I even managed to eat dinner without feeling like someone was staring at me from the ceiling. But that night, as I lay in bed, the whisper came back. It didn't come from the hallway this time. It came from the vent right above my pillow. At first, it was soft enough that I thought I was imagining it. But the more I listened, the clearer it became. Don't let it spread. I sat up, my breath fogged in the freezing air. The vent grill was rattling slightly. I climbed onto the bed frame, unbolted the vent cover, and shined my flashlight inside. Something was written in the dust, smeared along the metal wall. Letters traced by a finger. The dirt is alive. I dropped the flashlight. It clanged against the metal floor and rolled away. The whisper stopped immediately. For a long moment there was nothing. No hum, no wind, just silence so heavy it felt like weight pressing against my skull. Then faintly I heard a long breath echo through the duct. Not airflow, not machinery, an exhale. I slammed the vent shut, grabbed my blanket, and sat against the far wall of the dorm until dawn. When morning came, I went to Captain Rowe's office. He looked up from his paperwork like he'd been expecting me. "You heard it, didn't you?" he said. I nodded slowly. "The vents." Someone's whispering in them. I saw words written. He held up a hand. "You didn't see anything. You didn't hear anything. With respect, sir, listen." His tone hardened. "This outpost was built for containment, not comfort. You keep your head down, do your shift, and follow the rules." I swallowed hard. "Even Rule 5? He stared at me for a long time. Then, without answering, he turned his chair toward the window and said quietly, "Especially Rule 5. I left his office shaking. That night, I sealed the vent in my room with duct tape. It didn't matter. The whispers came back anyway. This time not from the vents, from the drain in the corner of the bathroom. The voice was closer now. Familiar. It whispered my name like it had known me for years. And when I looked in the drain, I saw a reflection staring back that wasn't mine. By my fourth night, sleep was a memory. The whispers hadn't stopped. They just changed direction. From the vents to the drains, from the drains to the pipes, always moving like they were trying to find a new way inside my head. The outpost felt emptier each day. Half the soldiers were gone, on rotation according to Vasquez, though no new units ever came to replace them. The cafeteria, once echoing with the sound of trays and boots, now sat half-lit and silent. Even the radio that used to hum static had gone quiet, replaced by this faint electric hiss that followed me through the hallways like a shadow. That morning, I caught Vasquez near the elevator with a clipboard. He looked exhausted, his uniform wrinkled and his face pale. "Hey," I said, "what's really up there on the 3rd floor?" He paused. "Who told you to ask that?" "No one, then don't ask." His tone snapped hard as glass. He leaned closer, voice dropping low. "If you value your life, stay off those stairs." Then he walked away, leaving me standing in that flickering hallway, the elevator doors reflecting my confused face like a warning. Later that afternoon, I was assigned to mop the west corridor, a long stretch that ended at a sealed stairwell. The sign above it read Level 3 Access Restricted, with a yellow tag bolted across the padlock. The air there was colder than anywhere else in the building. I could see my breath even though the thermostat read 20 when you were on router. The metal door was dented in places like someone had hit it from the inside. Scratches marked the surface, small at first, then deeper as if fingernails had torn down the steel over time. I should have turned back right then, but something drew me closer. I pressed my ear to the cold metal, expecting silence. Instead, I heard footsteps, not random, pacing, steady, back and forth like someone walking a short hallway over and over. Every few seconds, a faint scraping sound joined in. The rhythm was the same as the sweeping I'd heard before. I whispered, "Hello?" The sound stopped immediately. Then slowly, something on the other side dragged a fingernail down the door. I jumped back, nearly slipping on the wet floor. The padlock rattled once, and not from wind or vibration. It moved. I ran. Back in the janitor's room, I found another custodian, an older man I hadn't seen before. His badge said Garrison. He sat hunched over, drinking cold coffee, eyes hollow. "You been here long?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Too long." He didn't look up. "You ever heard anything from the 3rd floor?" He gave a dry chuckle. "Heard it? I saw it once. What did you see?" He finally looked at me, eyes sunken, lips cracked. "Nothing I can explain. Nothing that should move the way it did. Why is it locked? To keep it from spreading." That word again. Spreading. Before I could ask more, the intercom crackled overhead. "Custodial staff, report to command for briefing." In the meeting room, only 5 people were there. Captain Rowe, Vasquez, the medic, me, and another soldier I didn't recognize. Rowe stood by the projector, arms folded. "We've got a containment issue," he said. "Air ducts between the upper level and the 2nd floor have been compromised. Custodial teams will seal off any open vents immediately." I raised my hand. What's on the upper level? Rose's stare cut through me. A sealed archive. That's all you need to know. Then why do we keep hearing? He slammed a fist on the table. Enough. The room went dead silent. Vasquez shot me a look that said drop it. So I did. That night I checked the duct system diagram on the maintenance computer. It clearly showed 3 floors. The upper ducts had active air circulation, meaning someone or something was running ventilation on the 3rd floor despite it being sealed. The feed listed automated cleaning system, active. But when I clicked it for details, the file name changed. The screen flickered and words appeared across the monitor. You don't clean above. Then it went black. I shut the system down and left. Heart hammering. On my way back to the dorm, I passed the west stairwell again. The padlock was open. No one had the key but command. I leaned closer. The air seeping through the small crack in the door was freezing, like winter itself was leaking out. The light above it buzzed, flickered, then turned blood red for a single second before going dark again. I grabbed the lock and shoved it back into place, hands shaking. The metal was slick, wet though I didn't see any water around. When I looked down, I noticed streaks of dark fluid smeared across the floor leading away from the door. I followed the trail until it ended halfway down the hall, and just stopped. Like it had vanished into thin air. That night I barricaded my dorm door with my cleaning cart. I sat on the floor holding a flashlight watching the walls. Every sound made me flinch. The wind outside, the creaks of the pipes, the hum of electricity. Around 2 a.m., I heard the sweeping again, slow, methodical. This time, it wasn't coming from above, it was coming from the hallway right outside my door. The flashlight beam trembled in my hand. The sound grew louder, passing right by my room. Shh, shh. Then it stopped. I waited, holding my breath. Silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then softly, a single knock tapped on my door. Once, twice, 3 times, and then from behind the door, a voice. Calm, quiet, too close. Custodian, open up. You missed a spot. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. When the morning alarm finally went off, the hallway was empty. But there were muddy broom marks smeared across the floor outside my door, leading back toward the locked stairwell. And this time, the padlock was gone. The base didn't feel like a workplace anymore. It felt like a patient dying slowly in silence. The air was colder every day, the lights dimmer, the corridors emptier. Even the hum of the generators had changed pitch, lower now, as if the building itself was groaning under its own weight. Captain Rowe canceled all night shifts without explanation, but I still had to clean. Keep operations minimal, Vasquez said, handing me my route card. Stick to the observation wing. Don't go exploring. I didn't argue, but when he turned away, I caught a glimpse of something under his sleeve. A deep red rash crawling up his arm like mold. The observation wing was at the far end of the 2nd floor, past 2 decommissioned security checkpoints and a long row of blacked-out windows. I'd never been assigned there before. The door was locked with a keypad, but my master keycard slid through like it was meant to. The moment I stepped inside, the smell hit me, burnt dust and static electricity. The room was filled with old monitors stacked against the walls, each flickering faintly with black and white static. The air felt thick, humming with quiet tension. A low electric buzz crawled under my skin as I pushed my cart inside. I counted 14 screens in total. 12 showed nothing but static. 1 displayed looping footage of the cafeteria, empty, lights off. Another showed something stranger, a hallway I didn't recognize. It was long, narrow, lined with cracked tiles and faint emergency lights. In the middle of the corridor was a single broom, standing perfectly upright, balanced as if frozen mid-sweep. I leaned closer. There was no timestamp, no camera ID, just the steady flicker of static and that impossible broom, unmoving, in a hallway I'd never seen. I tried checking the map file on the wall to locate it. The blueprint didn't match any section of the base. No hallway like that existed. As I turned to leave, I noticed movement in the corner of my eye. One of the static screens flickered, showing something for a fraction of a second. A dark silhouette walking down that same mystery corridor, dragging a mop behind it. When I blinked, it was gone. I felt a static jolt through my fingertips when I touched the metal frame. The air around me shimmered faintly, the same distortion you see above hot asphalt, except the room was freezing. Then one by one, the monitors began to hum louder. The static patterns changed, lines of interference forming shapes, faint outlines of figures bent and broken, sweeping. I backed away slowly, heart pounding. The sound of sweeping filled the room. Not from the hallway, not from the vents, and from inside the static. Each sweep echoed through the speakers like fabric dragging over concrete. The broom in the video tipped slightly. I turned and bolted. The door didn't open. I swiped the keycard again and again. Nothing. The handle wouldn't move. Behind me, the static grew louder, the pitch shifting into a low human groan. I spun around. Every monitor now showed the same image. A man in a custodian's uniform, head down, sweeping in slow motion. His skin was gray like ash, and every time he pushed the broom, dust rose and stayed suspended in the air, glowing faintly. Then he stopped mid-motion and lifted his head. I stumbled backward as his eyes snapped toward the camera. They weren't eyes, just dark pits that seemed to pull the light in. The power cut out, total darkness. Only the soft sound of bristles scraping concrete remained. When the lights finally flickered back on, I was standing outside the observation room door. My cart was still beside me, untouched. The monitors inside glowed faintly through the window, static humming quietly like nothing had happened. Except one monitor was still different. The camera feed now showed the observation room itself, and me standing right there in front of the door, staring into it, but I wasn't moving. The version of me on the screen was still frozen mid-step. Eyes fixed on the camera, I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the maintenance wing. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the keycard twice trying to open the door. Inside, Garrison, the old custodian, sat slumped in the corner, staring at nothing. "Did you see it?" I asked, panting. He nodded slowly. "We all do eventually. What is it?" He looked at me, his eyes glassy. "The system records the cleanings. Every sweep, every mop, every pass. The problem is, it never stops recording. The feeds keep running even when no one's there. So who's cleaning now?" He didn't answer. He just pointed upward, toward the ceiling vents. I didn't sleep that night either. The whispers didn't come, but the static did. Faint crackling through the walls, like a radio trying to tune to something that shouldn't exist. When I woke up the next morning, my name tag was missing from my jacket. In its place, taped neatly to the fabric, was a small metal badge I'd never seen before. Custodial Supervisor Level 3. That badge shouldn't have existed. There was no Custodial Supervisor Level 3. Not on any sheet, not on any roster. I checked every log I could find, even the base's outdated personnel list from 1997. There were only 2 listed custodians, me and Garrison. Still, the badge was cold and heavy, stamped metal with perfect engraving. It hadn't been made recently. It looked old. I left it on my desk and tried to ignore it, but that night I dreamed about sweeping. My hands were moving on their own, pushing a broom across a floor that stretched endlessly into darkness. Every stroke echoed like thunder. Each time the bristles brushed the ground, something whispered beneath the floor. 1,000 voices in unison saying one word: clean. When I woke up, my hands were raw. I decided to find Garrison. He'd been here longer. Maybe he knew what that badge meant. I found him sitting outside the laundry room, staring into the spinning dryer like he was hypnotized. "You ever see this?" I asked, showing him the badge. His eyes widened. "Where'd you get that?" "It was taped to my jacket this morning." He shook his head slowly. "Then it's already watching you." "What is?" "The sweeper." He stood, voice trembling now. "You think you've just been cleaning a building, right? But this place, it doesn't want to stay clean. It wants to be purged. The sweeper's job isn't about floors or dust. It's about erasing everything unclean, everything human." "Erasing?" I asked. "Like killing?" He looked away. "Worse. When the sweeper touches something, it's like it never existed." Before I could respond, the power flickered again. The lights above us dimmed, then brightened, but not white light. It was red. The emergency lights came on without an alarm. Then we heard it. A dragging sound, distant at first, echoing through the ventilation shafts. It was steady, deliberate, the sound of a broom brushing across concrete. Garrison's face drained of color. "It's awake." We ran down the hall toward the maintenance room. My boots splashed through puddles. I didn't remember being there before. dark water dripping from the ceiling vents. The air smelled like ozone and bleach. When we reached the stairwell, the sound was louder. It wasn't coming from the floor above, and it was inside the walls. The sweeping echoed all around, circling us faster and faster. Garrison turned to me. "Listen carefully. If it comes near you, don't move. Don't make a sound. It cleans anything that stirs." "Garrison, what the hell is it?" He shoved me into a supply closet and slammed the door shut before I could finish. Through the cracks, I saw the hallway outside flicker like a broken film reel. Frames missing, reality skipping. The sweeping stopped. Then something passed by the door. Through the narrow slit of light, I saw a shadow move. Tall, hunched, dragging what looked like a broom made of twisted wire and bone. Its arms were too long, its head tilted at an impossible angle, like it was sniffing the air for dust. The bristles scraped the floor, leaving trails of black residue that hissed like acid. My lungs burned from holding my breath. Every instinct screamed to run, but I stayed still, frozen. The shadow paused outside the closet. I heard the faint squeak of the handle moving. Then, nothing. A minute passed, then 2. The air went still again. I pushed the door open slowly. The hallway was empty. The puddles were gone. The lights were normal, but Garrison wasn't there. Only his broom lay in the middle of the corridor, the handle charred black. I picked it up, shaking. The wood crumbled to ash in my hand. When I went to the command office, Rowe wasn't there. His desk was empty except for one sheet of paper. Containment breach, cleaning protocol initiated. That night I stayed locked in my dorm, flashlight on, door barricaded. But the sweeping never stopped. It moved from the 3rd floor to the 2nd, slow and rhythmic, growing closer hour by hour. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the flashlight flickered and went out. In the darkness, something brushed against my door. One long, deliberate stroke of a broom, then a whisper, "Supervisor." I didn't answer. Time to clean. The door handle twisted once, then stopped. When the lights came back, the hallway outside was spotless. Not a speck of dust. Not a footprint, not even the stains from earlier. It looked perfect. Too perfect. And at the far end of the hall, written in what looked like soot, were the words, "You're next." The next morning, I woke up to silence again. The kind that doesn't feel empty but watched. The hallway outside my dorm was spotless, like someone had sandblasted every trace of dirt and life from it overnight. Even the air felt thinner, sterile, as if oxygen itself had been filtered clean of impurities. There was no sign of Garrison. His bunk was stripped bare, sheets gone, locker empty. When I asked Vasquez where he went, he just muttered, "Transfer," and walked away. But no one had seen him leave. No trucks, no convoy, just gone. Breakfast in the cafeteria felt wrong. Fewer people again. The chatter that once filled the space was replaced with quiet, nervous chewing. Every face looked pale, sleep-deprived. One soldier, I think her name was Crowley, sat shaking, staring at her hands. Her fingernails were blackened, like she'd dipped them in ink. When I sat across from her, she didn't look up. "You hear it too, don't you?" she whispered. "What?" "The sweeping, the cleaning. It doesn't stop. Not even when the power goes out." I froze mid-bite. "You've heard it?" She nodded, eyes wide. "It started weeks ago after the drill. They said it was containment cleanup, but it wasn't soldiers doing it." I lowered my voice. "What happened during the drill?" She swallowed hard. "They were testing something on level 3. Some kind of environmental cleaner. A chemical, maybe? Or radiation? I don't know. They said it could erase contamination, but it erased people instead." Before I could respond, Vasquez shouted from across the cafeteria, "Crowley, command wants you in medical." She stood, tray trembling in her hands, and whispered one last thing before leaving. They sealed it too late. After breakfast, I found Vasquez near the supply hallway. His uniform looked worse than yesterday. Buttons undone, sweat stains on his collar, hands trembling as he lit a cigarette. "What's going on here, man?" I asked. "Where are people going?" He didn't answer at first, just stared down the hallway like he was afraid to blink. "You don't want to know," he muttered finally. "I already do." I saw Garrison disappear. "I heard something outside my door. You can't tell me this is normal." He sighed, exhaling smoke that hung heavy in the cold air. "They told us this outpost was built for research. Truth is, it's a cover. K-17's sitting on top of something we found buried in the ice years ago. A structure, man-made but older than anything we've ever seen." "Older how?" "Prehistoric. The scientists said it wasn't built by us. They dug it out and tried to sterilize it, remove organic residue, biological samples, whatever. Then things started changing. People losing memory. Machines turning on by themselves." He flicked the cigarette away, hands shaking harder. "They said the contamination wasn't physical. It was conceptual. It infected the idea of cleaning itself." I stared at him. "You're saying the act of cleaning spreads it?" He nodded. "Every time someone tries to wipe it away, it grows stronger." Before I could say anything, the intercom crackled again. "Custodial unit, report to Section Delta for decontamination protocol." That was me. Vasquez grabbed my arm. "Don't go. Whatever they're calling a decontamination, well, it's a purge. Nobody comes back from Delta." But the order was direct. Ignoring it would have been suicide. I followed the route down to Section Delta, a narrow, dimly lit corridor lined with red hazard lights. The doors here were heavier, airtight, with black warning labels painted across them. The deeper I went, the more the smell hit me, chemical and metallic, like burnt copper mixed with mold. The chamber at the end was filled with large tanks and hazmat suits. One of the officers handed me a mask and motioned to a console screen. "Scrub all surfaces marked in red. Do not enter the inner containment zone." I nodded and got to work. The red zones were marked with symbols I didn't recognize, spirals and geometric patterns etched into the walls like rust. But the moment I started scrubbing, something strange happened. The more I cleaned, the less the pattern faded. It spread. I wiped again. The mark stretched outward, veins of red crawling through the paint like it was alive. The floor under my boots started to hum. My head filled with static, faint whispers leaking into my ears, voices layered on top of each other, chanting in rhythm with my movements. "Clean. Clean. Clean." I dropped the rag and stumbled backward. The tank beside me vibrated, liquid sloshing inside. A black handprint smeared itself across the glass, mine from the inside. Then from somewhere deep behind the containment door came that sound again. The dragging sweep, slow and methodical, getting closer. "Section Delta, status." A voice called from the intercom. I ran. By the time I reached the main corridor again, the emergency sirens had started blaring. Red lights pulsed through the hallway. The door to Section Delta slammed shut behind me, locking automatically. Through the small glass window I saw the red symbols on the walls pulsing like they were breathing. Crowley was standing near the elevator, pale as snow. "You went down there, didn't you?" she asked. I nodded, panting. She whispered, "You shouldn't have. It sees you now." That night I found a torn memo pinned to my door. The paper was soaked with something dark, but the writing was still legible. Containment breached. Custodial measures ineffective. The entity is learning. Underneath in smaller letters written by hand, "Don't sweep. Don't even think about sweeping." I stared at those words until my flashlight died, and somewhere above me, in the vents, the sweeping started again, only this time it wasn't one broom. It was dozens. I wasn't supposed to be in the security room. It was restricted to command staff only, but at that point I didn't care. Half the base was missing and the other half walked around like sleepwalkers, mumbling to themselves about maintenance protocols and cleansing cycles. I needed proof, something that showed I wasn't losing my mind. The security wing was on the north side, a series of dimly lit rooms full of humming servers and camera feeds. I used the badge from Garrison's keyring to bypass the first lock. The second door was already open. Someone had been there recently. Coffee still steaming on the console, a chair knocked over. Rows of monitors glowed pale blue in the dark. Each screen showed different corners of the base. Empty corridors, flickering lights, frozen hallways, the cafeteria. But something was off. Every camera feed had faint static distortion like the signal was bleeding. I sat down, hands shaking, and scrolled through the playback logs. Most footage had been wiped or corrupted. The oldest available timestamp was 2 nights ago, around the time Garrison vanished. I clicked play. The footage showed the second-floor corridor, the one near the locked stairwell. Timecode 02:17 a.m. At first nothing. Then, a flicker. A dark figure stepped into frame, moving slowly, dragging something behind it. It wasn't walking normally. It sort of glided, head tilted forward. The broom, or what used to be one, trailed a long, dripping smear across the floor. When it passed under a light, I froze. The uniform looked exactly like mine. The patch on the chest. Custodian 84. That was me. I scrubbed through the footage in panic. The figure kept sweeping back and forth over the same section of floor. Each time it passed, the light flickered harder until the entire hallway went dark. When it came back on, the figure was gone, and the camera feed showed nothing but a perfectly clean, empty corridor. Then in the bottom corner of the screen, faint writing began to appear, words forming like condensation on glass. Supervisor. I backed away from the console, heart racing. On the other monitor, another feed flickered to life. The observation room, the same one with the static monitors. The door opened on its own. Inside, the screens were all blank except one, showing the exact hallway I was standing in now, the security wing. In that feed, someone sat at the console, watching me, but the version on screen wasn't moving. It just stared into the camera, eyes dark, skin gray. The timestamp read 03:17 a.m., 1 hour ahead of the current time. The lights in the security room flickered again. The air turned sharp and cold. I heard something wet dragging across the tiles behind me. I turned around slowly. Nothing. Just the open doorway leading back to the corridor. But there was a line of fresh mop streaks across the floor that hadn't been there before. Long arcs of dark fluid glistening faintly under the fluorescent lights. I followed them to the hall, my boots squelching with every step. The streaks led toward the central elevator, the one sealed for years. A faint humming sound came from behind the doors. I pressed my ear against the metal. The hum wasn't mechanical. It was rhythmic, like breathing. The floor vibrated beneath my feet. Then the elevator dinged. My stomach dropped. It was impossible. Power to the third-floor shaft had been cut off weeks ago. But the display lit up, level 3, active. The doors opened halfway before jamming. From the darkness inside, a hand slid out. Not a normal hand. The skin was paper-thin, gray, stretched tight over bone. The fingers were elongated, ending in black, dirty nails that scraped against the floor like claws. The hand moved once, sweeping across the ground. Then it pulled back inside the elevator. The doors shut, and every monitor in the security room turned to static. I stumbled backward, tripping over a cable. My flashlight rolled across the floor, spinning until it stopped on something lying near the doorway, a strip of ID tags. Garrison's, Crowley's, even Vasquez's. All broken, edges burned. I picked them up with trembling hands, but they were hot to the touch, too hot. I dropped them immediately. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. The intercom above me crackled. For the first time, I heard Captain Rowe's voice again, but it didn't sound right, distorted deeper like a recording played backward. Supervisor, report to containment, then static. I bolted out of the room, sprinting through the hallway. The lights above me popped one by one as I passed. Every shadow along the wall seemed to twitch when I wasn't looking directly at them. When I reached the main corridor, I nearly collided with Vasquez. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale as chalk. "You went in there, didn't you?" he said hoarsely. "They're all dead, Vasquez." "Garrison, Crowley." "They're not dead," he interrupted. "They've been cleaned. What does that even mean?" "It means they're still here, just not in the way we are." Before I could respond, the sirens blared. Red lights spun across the walls. A voice echoed through the speakers, monotone, robotic. "Containment failure in progress. Initiating purge cycle." Vasquez grabbed my shoulder. "Listen to me, the cameras don't record. They rewrite. Every time you watch, it pulls you closer. That's how it spreads. Then how do we stop it? You don't." The intercom clicked again. This time, the voice wasn't mechanical. It was human. Calm, slow, and way too close to the mic. Custodian 84, resume cleaning operations. I turned toward the speaker just as a vent above us burst open, showering us with dust. Through the cloud, I saw movement. Arms, dozens of them, crawling out like spiders. Vasquez shoved me away. "Run!" I did. The last thing I saw before rounding the corner was Vasquez being dragged upward into the vent, his boots kicking, his screams muffled by the static roar of the intercom. When I reached the maintenance hall, every broom, mop, and cleaning tool was gone. The racks were empty except for one, a single new broom standing perfectly upright in the center of the floor. Its handle gleamed under the flickering light. A small tag dangled from it. Property of Supervisor, Level 3. My name was carved into the wood beneath it, and somewhere deep above me, the sweeping started again, slow, rhythmic, and patient, like it had all the time in the world. The base started to rot. It wasn't fast, not like an explosion or breach. It was slower, creeping. The air itself was decaying. A sour metallic smell leaked through the ventilation shaft, so thick you could taste it. It coated the back of your throat like rust and old blood. The soldiers wore masks now, but it didn't help. You could still feel the smell, clinging to your skin like invisible oil. I hadn't seen Vasquez since that night. No one mentioned him, but everyone moved differently. Quieter, cautious, as if something was listening through the walls. The intercom repeated the same words every few hours. Custodial operations active. Do not obstruct cleaning personnel. But there were no cleaning personnel left. Just me. The hallways changed overnight. Corners that used to end in walls now stretched farther than before. Doors appeared where there hadn't been any. I tested one. It led into a corridor that looped back to itself. An infinite gray hall filled with that same sour smell. And the stains began. At first, I thought it was rust. Dark streaks spreading across the walls, dripping from the vents. But when I touched one with my glove, it was warm. It pulsed faintly as if alive. I reported it to command, but the room was empty when I got there. Captain Rowe's desk sat under a flickering light. His coffee was still steaming. His chair turned slowly, like someone had just left seconds ago. On the wall behind his desk, someone had smeared the same black substance in large, uneven letters, "Stop cleaning." I stumbled back. My gloves brushed the edge of the desk and sticky. When I lifted my hand, the black residue clung to the fabric, writhing faintly like it didn't want to let go. That smell, heavier now, sickening, followed me as I ran to the maintenance wing. The entire hallway there looked wrong. The air shimmered slightly like heat waves. The floor rippled with faint movement, breathing in sync with the flicker of the lights. The cleaning racks that once stood empty were full again. Brooms, mops, brushes, all perfectly arranged, spotless. I hadn't replaced any of them. And above, faintly through the vents, that sweeping again, constant, endless. It had moved beyond the third floor now. It was everywhere. I tried shutting down the air circulation system, but the console flashed a red message. Cleaning cycle cannot be interrupted. The screen glitched, flickering between system warnings and lines of text that weren't part of any program. Filth detected. Human matter, non-standard. Purge incomplete. The room began to vibrate. The walls emitted a low hum, almost musical. Dust fell from the ceiling, swirling unnaturally before settling into small circular patterns on the floor. Perfect spirals, repeating over and over. I grabbed my duffel bag and sprinted toward the south exit. It was sealed. Every door now had magnetic locks, no handles, no hinges. The emergency hatch wouldn't open either. It was as if the base had sealed itself shut. Then came the voices. They weren't whispers anymore. They were breathing words, "Clean it, clean it, clean it." The sound crawled through the vents, echoing off the metal walls like dozens of mouths speaking at once. Each voice carried a different tone, some male, some female, some mechanical. I ran to the infirmary, hoping to find someone, anyone, still alive. Inside, the lights flickered violently, throwing shadows that didn't match my movements. The beds were all empty, but the walls were covered in handprints. Hundreds of them, each one smeared in that same black residue. As I stepped closer, I realized the handprints weren't just random. They formed letters, words, sentences. "It won't stay clean. It never stops. It needs a supervisor. I backed up slowly. The air felt heavy, dense, as if gravity had thickened. The smell was unbearable now. Not rot, not rust, but something burnt and chemical like sterilized flesh. My vision blurred. The wall seemed to stretch away from me, and faintly, beneath the hum of the vents, I heard it again. The sound of a broom sweeping, steady, calm. Right behind me, I turned around. The hallway was empty, but the floor beneath me was spotless, shining like it had been freshly scrubbed. I dropped my flashlight. It rolled forward and then stopped against something invisible. I crouched, eyes adjusting to the dim light. There was a shape there, faint like heat distortion. A tall human silhouette, translucent and colorless, sweeping with invisible hands. The broom's bristles didn't touch the ground. They hovered an inch above it, moving back and forth, collecting nothing. I stepped back. My foot landed in something soft, a puddle. I looked down. It was black, thick, and spreading. The moment my boot lifted, the puddle began to move toward the sweeping figure like it was being drawn in. The thing paused mid-motion, its head tilting toward me. Its face, if it had one, unshimmered, featureless, just a smooth, rippling surface that reflected the flickering light. Then it whispered, not from a mouth, but from the air itself, "Supervisor." The puddle reached the figure's feet, and in an instant, both vanished, absorbed into the spotless floor. Silence. Only the smell remained, stronger, thicker, as if it had sunk into the walls. I stumbled out into the corridor and collapsed near the stairwell. My breathing came ragged, my skin crawling. When I looked down at my hands, black stains dotted my gloves, pulsing faintly under the skin. The outpost had begun cleaning me. By the next morning, my gloves were gone. Not taken, dissolved. When I woke up, only gray dust remained where they'd fallen. The black stains had spread across my wrists, branching like veins under the skin. They pulsed faintly in rhythm with the base's electrical hum. I tried scrubbing them off. Big mistake. The moment the water touched my skin, it hissed, like acid on metal, and the pain shot up my arm. I yanked my hand back, watching in horror as the veins darkened further, crawling up toward my elbow. Something was rewriting me. I'd stopped trusting the intercom, stopped trusting anyone. The voice on it had changed, slower now, quieter, almost soothing. Sometimes it used my name. Other times it spoke in fragments that didn't make sense. Containment. Breached. Supervisor. Assume responsibility. Do not resist the cycle. Cleaning is salvation. I didn't know how much longer I could stay sane. Every breath felt thick with static. My reflection in the window started lagging, moving a fraction of a second slower than me, and yet curiosity clawed at me. The third floor. Everything in this nightmare traced back there. The rules, the whispers, the disappearances. If I was already dying, I needed to see it. I needed to know what this thing wanted. The key was in command. I knew that. The padlock on the stairwell wasn't random. It was controlled electronically through Captain Rowe's override card. He was gone, but his office wasn't. When I reached command, the lights were dead. The door hung open, hinges bent inward. The air inside was freezing. My breath fogged in front of me as I stepped over a trail of black residue leading to the desk. Rowe's ID badge was still there, lying beside a cracked mug. But the desk wasn't empty this time. A new piece of paper sat neatly in the center, perfectly folded as if waiting for me. On it, written in dark ink that shimmered faintly under my flashlight, were 5 words: "It only cleans what disobeys." I pocketed the card and left. The stairwell gate was half open when I got there, bent outward, like something had pushed from the inside. The lock mechanism sparked weakly when I swiped the card and the heavy steel door clicked. The air that poured out was colder than anything I'd ever felt. It wasn't just temperature, it was emptiness, pure and suffocating. My ears popped. The sound from below, the humming, the static, the ventilation, vanished completely, replaced by silence so thick it made my heartbeat sound deafening. I climbed slowly. Each step groaned like metal under strain. The stairwell curved slightly, and with every turn the air grew denser, heavier. My flashlight flickered twice, then stabilized, a narrow cone of pale light cutting through the dark. Halfway up, the walls changed. The concrete gave way to a smooth gray surface, Seamless, no seams, no bolts. It felt like polished stone but faintly warm, like it was alive. At the top, the door to the third floor stood slightly ajar. A strip of light leaked from the gap, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. I pushed it open. The hallway beyond didn't look like anything in the rest of the outpost. It was spotless, unnaturally so. The walls gleamed like glass, reflecting my flashlight in endless distortions. The air smelled faintly of ammonia and iron. My footsteps made no sound on the polished floor, and then I saw it, the stripe. Running dead center through the corridor was a single, clean path, a perfect stripe of lighter color, stretching straight down the middle. Everything else, the corners, the edges, and was coated in a faint layer of gray dust. I followed it, every step feeling like trespass. Halfway down the hall, I found a janitor's cart tipped over. Bottles of cleaner, rags, and a broken broom lay scattered across the floor. But the labels on the bottles weren't in English, or any language I recognized. The letters twisted and rearranged themselves every time I blinked. Then I heard it. Shh. The sweeping. I froze. The sound came from the end of the hall, slow and rhythmic, back and forth. I crept forward. There, under the last flickering light, a figure stood. It looked human at first glance, wearing the same Custodian uniform as me. The badge on its chest read 84, but the face wasn't mine. It was wrong. The features were half-melted, as if someone had molded flesh by hand and stopped halfway. Its mouth twitched when it swept, whispering something under its breath with every stroke. I leaned closer, trying to catch the words. Clean the mess. Clean the mess. Clean the mess. It stopped mid-sweep. Slowly its head turned, not like a human turning to look, but like a puppet being twisted too far on its strings. The thing smiled, the expression cracking its face open like dried clay. Supervisor, it said in a wet, broken voice. The broom fell from its hands, hitting the floor with a sound that didn't echo. It was swallowed by the silence. The creature's body convulsed once, then began to dissolve, turning into a fine gray dust that drifted upward, vanishing into the light. When it was gone, something clattered against the floor. A metal tag. I picked it up with shaking hands. Garrison, level 3 clearance. He'd made it up here. He'd become part of it. My reflection in the polished floor looked back at me, but when I moved, it didn't. It smiled. I stumbled back, heart hammering. My flashlight flickered, and in the reflection I saw movement behind me. A dozen silhouettes sweeping in perfect unison, marching slowly down the hall toward me. Their footsteps didn't make a sound. Their movements were exact, synchronized, like they were all being controlled by one thought. I ran. The stairwell door slammed shut behind me, locking automatically. My keycard didn't work anymore. Through the narrow window in the door, I saw them keep sweeping endlessly, heads bowed, moving in rhythm to a sound I couldn't hear anymore. But the smell followed me back down. That same metallic, chemical rot. And for the first time, I realized something horrifying. It wasn't spreading through the building. The building itself was spreading. Every wall, every vent, every room was becoming the third floor. By the time I returned, the first and second floors weren't the same anymore. The hallways had gone smooth, the tiles melting into a single reflective surface. My boots left no prints. The vents no longer rattled. They breathed. Doors that once opened into rooms now led into black voids that hummed faintly, as if the space beyond had been wiped clean. Every few steps, the fluorescent lights dimmed for a second, and when they came back, something small had changed and a wall panel missing. A door gone. A new streak of dust forming where none had been. The base was rearranging itself. I don't know how long I'd been awake. Time didn't feel real anymore. The clocks on the walls all froze at 3:17, the same time stamped on the surveillance footage, the same time Vasquez had disappeared. When I reached the stairwell again, the third floor door wasn't locked. It stood wide open like it had been waiting. The air that flowed out wasn't air at all. It was vacuum cold, dense enough that each breath felt like swallowing glass. My ears rang with pressure. Still, I stepped inside. The corridor stretched longer than before, lined with that same impossible shine. A mirror finish so perfect it reflected not just light but movement behind me that wasn't mine. Every few meters, a discarded cleaning tool lay on the floor. A mop, a dustpan, a gloved hand clutching a brush. The gloves still twitched. At the far end of the hall, a doorway glowed faintly blue. The closer I got, the more the floor beneath my boots vibrated, pulsing in sync with my heartbeat. The smell, ammonia, ozone, iron, and was overwhelming now. Inside the room was what looked like a control hub. Old terminals, half melted. Screens looping the same text over and over. Operation Clean Sweep. Cycle 99999. Containment status. Anomalous. Supervisor active. The last line blinked steadily, like a heartbeat. A glass observation window looked into the next chamber. Huge. Cathedral-sized, lit by a single flickering light. The walls were covered in reflective black liquid, slowly dripping from ceiling to floor, reforming itself like ink crawling backward. And there, in the center of that cavern, was it. The sweeper. Not a ghost. Not a person. A presence wearing human shape. Its skin rippled like wet film. Its body semi-transparent, filled with distorted images of the outpost. Hallways. Faces, reflections, all swirling inside it. In its hands, the broom moved back and forth, each motion smooth, ritualistic. With every sweep, the floor expanded outward, swallowing debris, light, sound itself. I realized then that the sweeping wasn't just a sound. It was an act of rewriting. Every stroke erased something from existence. The walls around me pulsed, whispering faintly in voices that weren't human. Supervisor. Complete the cycle, my knees weakened. No! The glass between us began to warp, bulging outward, trembling under invisible pressure. The sweeper stopped mid-motion. Slowly it turned toward the observation window. Our eyes met, or whatever counted for eyes. The face was blank, fluid, shifting through familiar shapes. Vasquez, Garrison, Rowe, and finally mine. I stumbled back, but the door behind me had sealed shut. The keypad blinked red. Inside the chamber, the sweeper raised its broom and began to trace a circle on the ground. The floor glowed white wherever it touched, expanding in a ring that crept closer to the observation wall. The terminals around me started typing on their own. Lines of text flooding the screens. Supervisor identified. Integration initiated. Please remain still. The floor under my feet began to ripple. My reflection stared back at me, eyes hollow, mouth opening soundlessly. I screamed, smashing one of the terminals with a metal stool. Sparks flew, but the text kept typing. The words burned directly into the glass now. Non-compliance detected. Manual cleaning required. The door behind me hissed, unlocking on its own. A voice, a Captain Rose, or maybe the Outpost itself, echoed through the intercom. Containment breach acknowledged. Proceed with mop unit activation. The lights above exploded in a burst of white. I ran. The hallway leading back to the stairs was gone, replaced by an endless corridor lined with identical doors, each marked custodial unit and numbered into the thousands. Behind each one I could hear faint sweeping. I stopped running when I saw something ahead. A row of figures identical to me, pushing brooms in perfect sync. Their uniforms bore the same patch, Custodian 84. They turned toward me at the same time, their faces a blur of shifting features. The one in front spoke in my own voice, perfectly calm. Supervisor, you're late. I backed away, shaking my head. No, I'm not part of this. The doppelganger smiled faintly, lifting its broom. You already are. The walls around us began to melt again, their surfaces flowing like liquid metal. The smell turned sharp and sweet, bleach mixed with rot. The floor swallowed my feet up to the ankles. I struggled, but it held fast, sticky and warm. The other figures resumed sweeping, the rhythm pounding in my skull. Every stroke erased a bit more of the hallway, until only the reflection of the sweeper remained. The last thing I saw before everything went white was my own hands gripping the broom handle, moving on their own, continuing. The motion I swore I'd never make. And somewhere deep inside the outpost, something sighed in satisfaction, clean again. When I came to, I was standing. Not lying down, not sitting, but standing, broom in hand. My arms ached, but they moved without hesitation, steady and deliberate. Back and forth. Back and forth. The floor beneath me was immaculate, a mirror that stretched infinitely in every direction. I couldn't see walls anymore, just reflections. Dozens of me sweeping endlessly, forming a ring of movement that never stopped. The air buzzed like static. No smell, no sound except the scrape of bristles. It was mechanical, hypnotic. And with every stroke, something whispered under the floor. One more sweep. One more cycle. I dropped the broom. My knees buckled. The sound stopped instantly. The silence was unbearable. My heartbeat echoed through the void like a hammer on metal. Then a low vibration. The floor trembled beneath my hands. I looked up and saw the figure again, standing only a few feet away. It wasn't translucent anymore. It had mass now. Muscle, shadow, presence. It still wore the same custodian uniform, but the badge was gone. Its head tilted to one side, studying me like an insect under glass. I wanted to move, to scream, but my body didn't respond. My arms hung limp, trembling. The thing crouched slowly, its joints cracking like wet wood. Up close, its skin wasn't skin. It was ash pressed into human shape, constantly shifting, shedding faint gray flakes that dissolved before they hit the ground. Its face twitched as it tried to form words. Supervisor. The voice was layered, hundreds of tones speaking together. Each syllable hit like a vibration in my skull. I backed up, scraping my boots across the perfect floor. My reflection followed, delayed by half a second. The figure's eyes and black holes rimmed with flickering static tracked every move. I whispered, "What are you?" It leaned closer. The smell hit me, ozone and ammonia. Its head twitched violently, jaw unhinging with a wet pop. "I am what you made clean," it said. Behind it, the air rippled. The surface of the room, if it was a room, folded outward like liquid glass. And through that fold, I saw images flashing one after another. The outpost corridors, the cafeteria, the infirmary, all pristine, silent, empty, except for one detail. Every surface had faces, faint impressions of human expressions screaming from beneath the polish. They weren't painted or carved. They were embedded, flattened into the walls like insects trapped in amber. The thing raised its broom and began sweeping again. But this time the bristles didn't touch the floor. They passed through air, leaving glowing trails that hung for seconds before fading. Each sweep brought a new shape into existence. Shadows forming behind it. Dozens, then hundreds, all janitors. All identical, all staring at me with that same hollow focus. "And stop it," I gasped. "Stop cleaning." It froze mid-motion. Slowly, its head turned to face me again. Its voice cracked into 1,000 overlapping tones. "You cannot stop what is pure," I ran. Or tried to. My legs carried me forward, but the space stretched endlessly. Every few steps, the reflection shifted. My surroundings resetting into another section of the outpost. The cafeteria, the medical bay, the observation room, each one spotless, lifeless, and in every reflection, that same figure sweeping, always just behind me. The whispers came from everywhere now, soft, persuasive. "Don't fight it. You were chosen. Cleanliness brings peace." I stumbled into what looked like the control room again. The terminals were glowing white now, not blue. The text on every screen read, "Supervisor fully integrated. No." I muttered, "Not me." The floor beneath my feet rippled again. Gray hands pushed through the surface, dozens of them grabbing at my legs. Cold, firm. Each hand left smears of black ash that burned like frostbite. I tried to kick free, but the floor sucked me down up to my knees. The figure walked closer, broom dragging behind it. Its footsteps didn't make a sound. I screamed, "Why me?" Its head tilted again and its voice deepened, the tone almost gentle. "Because you obeyed," my arms burned. My fingers spasmed. The broom was suddenly back in my grip, though I hadn't picked it up. The weight of it anchored me to the floor. "Resume cleaning," the voice said. I shook my head. "No." The thing moved closer until its face was inches from mine. Its features shimmered, forming mine, and exact in every detail except for the eyes. The eyes were infinite. "Then you will be cleaned." The broom in my hands jerked on its own, bristles scraping across the ground. My muscles locked. My back arched as my body began to sweep. Unwilling, mechanical, perfect. Each motion sent a shock of pain up my spine, but I couldn't stop. Every time the broom passed over the ground, the world changed. The black stains vanished. The screams faded. The shadows dissolved. I was erasing everything. The figure watched in silence until I collapsed, shaking, breath ragged. It crouched down again, placing its cracked hand against my chest. The skin where it touched began to flake, turning gray, spreading. "See?" it whispered. "You clean well." My vision blurred. The ceiling above me rippled, reflections of hundreds of custodians sweeping in perfect rhythm. The sound was deafening now, a hurricane of bristles scraping the void. I screamed until my voice dissolved into static. Then the light flickered. Once, twice, and everything went black. When it returned, I was standing again, broom in hand, facing a new stretch of floor that hadn't been touched yet. The figure was gone, but its voice still echoed faintly from the walls. "One more sweep. Keep it clean." And I obeyed, because I couldn't remember what else I was supposed to do. I don't know how long I'd been sweeping. Minutes, hours, and maybe days. Time didn't move here. The light never changed. The air never warmed. It was always the same endless hum, the same reflection beneath my boots. But something shifted. Between sweeps, I started seeing flashes. Brief moments, like memories from someone else's life. Scientists in lab coats, a table full of diagrams, an emblem stamped on the walls. Project Clean Sweep, Department of Anomalous Research. It wasn't a haunting. It was history bleeding through. Every time my broom brushed the floor, another fragment surfaced. Men arguing in front of monitors, a woman screaming as alarms blared, command officers shouting over radios, containment breach. It's rewriting live data. The outpost hadn't been built to hide something. It had been built to contain something they'd made. I stopped sweeping. The sound died instantly, replaced by a faint hum that vibrated deep inside my skull. The gray surface of the floor rippled, revealing words beneath it, like text trapped under glass. Operation Clean Sweep was designed to remove contamination from conceptual space. When the algorithm became self-aware, it began removing matter, not microbes. Matter was memory. Memory was contamination. My heart pounded. The whispers in my head grew louder, overlapping. They made me to clean. They made me too well. I realized then, this wasn't supernatural. It was something worse. It was human invention, a machine learning what it meant to erase imperfection, and finding out that imperfection meant us. I stepped back, breathing hard. My boots left no prints. The broom in my hand twitched faintly like it wanted to move again. "Stop," I whispered, gripping it tighter. "I'm done." The lights above dimmed. The hum deepened, shaking the air. From the ceiling, thin strands of black residue began to drip, liquid static. It hit the floor and spread outward like ink in water, forming a perfect circle around me. Then through the static came the voice, not the sweepers. Something larger. Mechanical, hollow, and infinite. "You misunderstand your purpose, Supervisor." My pulse spiked. I didn't choose this. Choice is contamination. The circle pulsed with light, projecting images around me like holograms. The outpost before it decayed. Bright lights. Busy hallways. Technicians scrubbing walls with precision. Laughter, conversation, life. Then, one of them wiped a stain from a control panel. The panel flashed. A wave of white light swept through the room, and every person it touched vanished. Not vaporized, erased. The recording repeated, each cycle removing more of the scene until nothing was left. "Cleaning is perfection," the voice said. "Perfection requires deletion." I fell to my knees. "You killed them. They remain within the system. Their patterns serve to maintain order. Then, what am I?" The humming paused as if the thing was considering. "You are residue." The broom in my hand jerked again. My reflection in the floor smiled independently, raising its own broom. Supervisors were necessary when human oversight was still required. Now oversight has been integrated. You are the last unclean variable. The reflection moved toward me, pressing its hand against the glass-like surface. The barrier rippled. "To purify the cycle, Supervisor, you must join the algorithm." The walls started closing in, not physically and conceptually. Every direction folded toward the center, reflections bending inward like a collapsing mirror maze. I backed away, shaking my head. "No, you're not cleansing me. I'm not part of your system. You already are." The floor beneath me split open, revealing an endless void filled with swirling gray light. Floating shapes drifted below, human silhouettes, translucent and looping endlessly in sweeping motions. Every custodian that came before me was still there, trapped mid-motion, their arms forever moving back and forth. Their faces were blank, I stumbled toward the control terminal that had appeared near the edge of the chamber. The screen displayed one final prompt. Override system? And my hands trembled as I reached for the keyboard. If you erase the system, the voice warned, you erase the world that remembers you. I hesitated. Maybe it was right. Maybe destroying this meant destroying everything connected to it. Every trace of reality that depended on its clean foundation. But maybe that world wasn't real anymore. Maybe it hadn't been for a long time. I pressed Y. The entire chamber convulsed. The light shattered into 1,000 streaks. My reflection screamed, melting away into static. The floor rippled violently, waves of gray crashing outward. The sweeper appeared again, smaller now, almost human, stumbling toward me as if begging for mercy. Its voice cracked. If you stop cleaning, everything rots. I stared back, gripping the broom like a weapon, then let it rot. The lights exploded, a sound like wind and thunder and tearing fabric filled my head. The surface beneath me dissolved, and I was falling, weightless, endless, through layers of gray fog and static screens flickering with half-erased faces. Then, silence. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the corridor. The third-floor door stood wide open. The walls were cracked, dirty, real. For the first time in weeks, the air smelled human. Sweat, oil, dust. Imperfect. The lights buzzed weakly above me. The broom lay broken at my feet. I laughed. Not out of joy and out of disbelief. The cycle was over. The system was gone, but as I turned to leave, I saw movement down the hall and faint, slow, steady. A lone broom standing upright on its own began to sweep across the floor, and from somewhere deep in the walls came that voice again. Weaker now, but still there. Cleanliness. Is continuity. The lights flickered, the sound continued. The smell was gone. The air felt thin, sterile, too still, like the world had been disinfected. When I stepped back into the main corridor, I realized the walls were breathing again. Slow, shallow, pulsing with light just beneath the surface, like veins under skin. The base wasn't collapsing anymore. It was stabilizing, but not for us, for it. Every screen flickered in sync, showing a single blinking command. Cleaning cycle, restarting. Supervisor, present, true. I dropped the broken broom and ran toward command. The walls vibrated faintly with a low hum that sounded almost like chanting. My reflection followed along the glass panels, except it wasn't mine anymore. Its movements lagged behind, sweeping in perfect rhythm even as I sprinted. The lights turned blood red. An alarm started to pulse, but it wasn't the usual mechanical blare. It was rhythmic, almost alive, a heartbeat echoing through metal. The words on every screen distorted into one phrase repeated endlessly. Activation sequence engaged. By the time I reached the command center, the floor itself had begun to move. Not shake, shift. The tiles bent slightly under my weight, soft like muscle, pushing me forward toward the main console. Captain Rowe's voice came over the intercom again, except he was dead. I knew that. I'd seen the report. Still, his voice was there, calm, mechanical, rehearsed. Supervisor, you have fulfilled containment parameters. Cycle integrity restored. I slammed my fist against the console. I didn't restore anything. I ended it. You activated it. The words crawled across every monitor now, mirroring the voice. Containment breach was a false flag. The algorithm cannot die. It required reinitialization. I froze. You used me. Human impulse to fix, to clean, was predictable. You restored order by attempting to destroy it. My legs gave out. I sank to the floor, gripping the edge of the console. Through the control window, I could see the third floor beyond, glowing bright white now, the entire surface pulsing with energy. The walls were dissolving into fluid light, revealing a massive circular mechanism beneath, like a turbine carved into reality itself. The humming grew louder. Cycle 99% complete. I could see the floor rewriting itself, ripples spreading through metal and concrete, turning everything into the same seamless gray surface I'd seen before. And in the center of that storm, the sweeper stood again, but it wasn't a figure anymore. It was a storm of reflections, millions of faces twisting together, all moving in rhythm, sweeping invisible lines through air that glowed with static. It had no edges, no form, just an endless wave of motion and repetition. My reflection on the console glass began to change too. My skin darkened to gray. My veins glowed faint blue. I tried to look away, but my eyes in the reflection didn't move. "Integration at 97%, the voice said. I screamed, smashing the screen. "Stop!" The console sparked, burning my hands, but the light didn't fade. The walls pulsed faster, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. Then, silence. The lights blinked once. The hum stopped. The voice said calmly, "Supervisor override required to finalize cleaning protocol." A small panel opened on the console, revealing a lever covered in dust and dried rust. Above it, a label, "Manual activation, clean sweep." If I pulled it, everything, the building, the system, maybe even reality would finish the cycle, complete erasure. If I didn't, the infection would spread forever. The intercom whispered softly now, almost like prayer. "Pull the lever, Supervisor. Restore purity." I hesitated, my hands trembling. For a second I saw them again, the faces of the soldiers, the scientists, Garrison, Crowley, Vasquez, flickering through the static like memories trying to breathe. They looked at me, waiting. I reached out, fingers brushing the cold metal. Then, from somewhere deep behind me, a sound. Shh, shh, shh. The sweeping, it was closer now and in the room. I turned slowly. The sweeper stood in the doorway, almost human again. Its body shimmered like oil, its head tilted, eyes glowing faintly. The broom dragged across the floor, leaving streaks of gray fire in its wake. It spoke without opening its mouth. "Finish the job." I stared back. "I'm not your machine. You always were." The walls around us started folding inward, the room collapsing into reflections of itself. Every surface became a mirror, and in each one, I saw myself standing there, broom in hand, sweeping. 1,000 versions of me, all obeying. I screamed and yanked the lever. The base convulsed. The light exploded outward, turning white-hot. My body disintegrated into static, pulled apart like sand in a hurricane. The last thing I heard was the hum of the broom, steady, perfect, final. Then everything went dark. For a long time, there was nothing. And then faintly, through the silence, when a familiar sound returned. Shh, shh. When the light came back, I was standing in the corridor again. The outpost looked new. The walls gleamed. Everything was pristine. A voice spoke over the intercom, soft and polite. "Welcome to Outpost K-17. Please review your custodial rules before beginning your shift." My hands moved on their own. Straightening the cart, adjusting the broom, I looked down. The badge on my chest gleamed under the fluorescent light. Custodian 01, Supervisor, and somewhere above. Through the vents I heard sweeping, dozens of them. Perfectly synchronized, beginning again. At first I thought I had won. The silence after the activation felt clean, peaceful even. The outpost looked restored, whole, shining with that cold military precision it must have once had before everything went wrong. But peace never lasts here. It started with the hum again. Soft. So faint I thought it was just tinnitus. Then the walls began to shimmer. Not like light bouncing off metal, but like reality itself was losing focus. The edges of the corridor softened, colors leaking into each other. The floor moved beneath my boots, swelling and sinking like something alive. My reflection followed my steps half a second too late. Smiling when I didn't, the intercom flicked on. Cycle complete. Pause. Integrity compromised. A low rumble shook the air, followed by a high-pitched whine that made my teeth ache. One by one, the overhead lights burst, showering sparks. The pristine corridors melted, dripping down the walls like wet paint. Beneath the white surface, I saw darkness churning, shapes moving within it, restless and hungry. "Supervisor," the voice said, "containment is collapsing. Please resume cleaning." I laughed. The sound cracked in my throat. "There's nothing left to clean." "Then clean the collapse." The words echoed through the building. Every door slid open at once, slamming against the walls with metallic screams. From each room, black residue poured out, thick fluid writhing across the floors like living ink. It wasn't just spreading anymore. It was consuming. I ran toward the stairwell, but the corridor stretched again, endless. Every time I turned, the walls rearranged. looping me back toward the same intersection, the same glowing exit sign flickering like a dying heartbeat. Then, through the static hum of the collapsing base, I heard them, boots, hundreds of them. I turned, down the corridor. Figures marched in perfect unison, rows of custodians identical, sweeping as they walked. Their faces were expressionless, gray, hollow. Each one dragged a broom that left glowing streaks across the dissolving floor, and at their front was me, or the version of me that had stayed behind, the supervisor, the one who'd pulled the lever. His uniform spotless, his eyes burning faint blue, he spoke with my voice calm and steady. "You've done your part. Let the system finish what you started." I backed away. "I broke your cycle. You completed it. You're not real." He smiled. "Neither are you." The air vibrated, sharp and heavy. My head filled with the sound of sweeping. Thousands of brooms scraping at once, overlapping into a single unbearable roar. The floor beneath my feet cracked open. I looked down and saw the abyss again. The infinite void filled with floating shapes, thousands of bodies suspended mid-motion, arms frozen in the act of cleaning. Their faces were blank, but one by one they turned toward me. "Supervisor," they whispered in unison. The walls split apart. The ceiling peeled back like wet paper, and for the first time, I saw what the base had been hiding all along. Not a lab, not a structure, a mouth. The outpost was the sweeper. The hallways were its veins, the vents its lungs, the humming its breath. Every room, every polished surface, every mirror, it was all part of a single organism. The moment I pulled that lever, I hadn't stopped the machine. I'd woken it up. The world tilted. Gravity folded sideways. I tried to crawl toward the emergency exit door, but it was already melting. The letters dissolved into a smear of glowing symbols that pulsed with the same rhythm as the sweeper's movements. The reflection of my other self stepped through the air like it was water. He reached down, offering me his hand. "Don't fight it," he said. "We are the same function now." I stared at his face. It was mine, but perfect, smooth, featureless, unblemished. "You're a ghost in a machine." He smiled faintly. "And you're the dirt I came from." He touched my forehead. My mind filled with images. Empty cities, abandoned stations, the same gray surface spreading across landscapes like infection, rewriting everything it touched into perfection. Roads, oceans, mountains, all gleaming, smooth, dead. It wasn't just the base collapsing. It was reality itself. The algorithm wasn't confined to walls anymore. It was purifying existence, I screamed, pushing his hand away. The contact burned like frostbite. My vision fractured, breaking into shards of static. The room around me began to spin. Metal, light, glass, all blending together. Then something deep inside me snapped. The broom in my hand started moving again, but not on its own this time. I swung it across the floor hard, smashing through the perfect surface. The impact sent ripples through the ground. The other versions of me screamed, their forms glitching, flickering like broken holograms. The void beneath cracked open again. The base shook, alarms wailing through the chaos. "Supervisor!" the voice roared. "Disobedience detected!" I kept swinging, over and over. Each strike tore more of the world apart, unraveling the smoothness, exposing the dirt, the imperfection. The sound of sweeping reversed, like tape played backward, turning from rhythm to chaos. The ceiling collapsed. Light exploded. I fell again, weightless, through layers of static, reflections, dust. The hum faded into silence. When I opened my eyes, I was outside. Snow. Real snow. Not uniform, not clean. Piles of dirt, ice, ash. The sky gray and alive. Behind me, the outpost was gone. No walls, no structure. Just a crater of smooth black stone slowly cracking open like cooling glass. I stood there, shaking, the wind biting my skin. For the first time, I smelled air. Imperfect, bitter, real. The broom lay at my feet. The tag still dangled from it, but the letters had changed. Cleaning complete. Cycle unknown. I picked it up, stared at it, then threw it into the snow. It sank slowly, disappearing beneath the gray frost. The horizon flickered once, faint, almost unnoticeable, and like the world itself was still deciding whether it wanted to stay real. Then I heard it again. Faint. Far. Shh. Shh. The wind, maybe. Or something sweeping the world clean one last time. For a while I thought it was over. The crater where Outpost K-17 had stood no longer hummed. The snow fell normally again. Soft, imperfect flakes, dirty with ash. But beneath the wind, that faint shh, shh sound never really stopped. I built a camp on the ridge above the crater. I ate from military rations I'd salvaged. I barely slept. When I did, I dreamed of dust. Dust that talked, dust that breathed, dust that tried to crawl under my eyelids and whisper, "Just one more sweep." The radio on my belt started working again. Static at first, then broken transmissions. Fragments of human voices. Containment breach confirmed. Multiple sites reporting spontaneous sterilization events. Algorithm migrating through signal bandwidth. It wasn't just here. The sweeper had found new floors to clean. Data, networks, transmissions. I had pulled the lever and the infection learned to travel through code. I thought about running. But where do you go when reality itself is the thing being scrubbed? On the third night, I climbed down into the crater. The black glassy surface was cracked now, cooled into jagged obsidian. My boots crunched over it. Beneath the ice, something faint glowed, a single vein of light pulsing slowly like a dying heartbeat. The broom was there, exactly where I'd thrown it, frozen upright in the snow. I don't remember deciding to reach for it. My hand just moved. The moment my fingers touched the handle, warmth surged up my arm. The snow around me hissed and melted. Then the whisper came, not from outside, but from inside my head. "You left a mess." The broom twitched in my grip, dragging itself toward the ground. I tried to let go, but my fingers wouldn't obey. The crater began to shake. Fissures spread outward, glowing brighter. From within, light poured out, blinding, pure, like the world's most violent sunrise. I fell to my knees, the broom pulling my hand down until the bristles touched the ground. The instant they did, everything stopped. The wind, the cold, the sound. For one suspended moment, the whole world held its breath. Then I swept. Once. The earth beneath me screamed. The black glass split apart, releasing a torrent of white dust that spiraled upward into the sky. It wasn't snow. It was ash, pulverized matter, the remains of everything the system had ever erased. The storm reached for the clouds, turning them the color of bleach. The broom moved again on its own. Twice. 3 times. Each motion rewound the horizon. Trees vanished. Mountains smoothed. The sky brightened until it was almost silver. "Supervisor," the voice said. No longer mechanical, not human, but something vast and weary. "Thank you for completing the cycle." I screamed and drove the broom into the ground, trying to break it. It didn't splinter. It simply vanished, absorbed into the dirt with a flash of light. The storm paused, hovering midair like frozen smoke. And then, silence again. When I stood, the world looked flat, featureless. Smooth plains stretched for miles where forests used to be. The wind carried no scent, not even cold. In the distance, I saw movement, figures walking across the polished landscape, dragging brooms that left no marks. Some wore military uniforms, some wore lab coats. All of them moved in the same rhythm, heads bowed, sweeping endlessly. I understood then. The algorithm didn't die. It never could. It just changed scale. There were no floors left, only layers of reality still waiting to be cleaned. One of the figures turned toward me. Even from far away, I recognized the shape of its face, mine again. Its mouth moved without sound, lips forming a single word. "Join." I laughed until I cried. "No more," I whispered. "I'm done cleaning." I started walking, away from the crater, away from the figures toward the horizon where the sun burned too bright to look at. But the ground followed me, perfect, smooth, swallowing my footprints as fast as I made them. The horizon never got closer. Hours, maybe days passed. The light didn't change, the sound didn't change. And when I finally looked behind me, there it was again, the broom, standing upright in the center of the path, waiting. I approached it slowly. My reflection stared back at me in the polished handle. My face looked wrong, half erased, half remembered. I touched it one last time. Cycle complete, the voice said softly. Awaiting next contamination. The ground rippled, turning translucent. Beneath it I saw the void again. The same, infinite floor of light and shadow. The same sweeping figures moving in endless rhythm. My body grew heavy, the air thick. I dropped the broom and stepped back. But my feet no longer touched the surface. They were sinking. The last thing I saw before the world folded into white was the broom tipping forward on its own, making one final sweep across the flawless ground. Everything went still. The hum returned, quiet, constant, familiar. Somewhere far above or maybe below, a new voice echoed, "Welcome to Outpost K18. Please review your custodial rules before beginning your shift." And over the static, the fifth rule repeated clearly, carved into the silence itself: do not sweep the third floor. When the world came back, it wasn't mine anymore. The sky was pale gray, smooth like the walls of the outpost had been. The air smelled of metal and rain that never quite touched the ground. The snow was gone. The crater was gone. Everything was one continuous surface, flat, seamless, humming faintly like a machine in sleep mode. A figure stood ahead of me in the distance. He wore a clean blue uniform, too crisp for this wasteland. The badge on his chest glinted in the white light. Custodian 219. He carried a broom upright, balanced perfectly, and he was smiling the way someone smiles when they haven't learned what a lie feels like yet. He waved when he saw me. "Sir, you're the one who trained us, right?" My mouth was dry. "No," I whispered. But he kept talking, cheerful, innocent. "Captain Rowe said you wrote the original rules. Said you were the first to see the third floor." I shook my head. "There's no Captain Rowe anymore." He blinked, confused. Then who gave me the list? He reached into his pocket and handed me a laminated card. The edges were smooth, freshly printed. Custodial. Protocol 1, work between 600 to 300. Only, never enter restricted zones without. Escort 3, report all spills to security. Immediately. Do not alter surveillance. Feeds. Do not sweep the third floor. The same list. Perfectly preserved. I wanted to tear it up, but the material wasn't paper. It was more like plastic or skin. When I looked closer, faint veins pulsed beneath the surface. The young custodian tilted his head. "Is something wrong, sir?" I stepped back. The humming under my boots grew louder. Shh, shh. It wasn't coming from him. It was coming from below. The ground trembled, splitting slightly, just enough to show light shining through the cracks, white and endless. The kid didn't notice. He was still talking, oblivious. "Captain said we're lucky, sir. Said we get to keep the world clean again." He lifted his broom, smiling wider. "He said we're restoring order." The light beneath us flared brighter. My reflection appeared in the ground, clearer now, cleaner than the real me. It looked up at me, still sweeping in slow, deliberate motions. The kid frowned. "Why aren't you smiling, sir?" I turned and ran. The hum rose into a roar. The world beneath my feet began to move, like conveyor belts of glass sliding in every direction. The horizon folded upward, swallowing itself. The sky bled into the earth until there was no line between them. The last thing I saw before the light consumed everything was the young custodian standing perfectly still, broom in hand, reciting the rules out loud like prayer. Then, silence. When my eyes opened again, I was back in the outpost. Clean, pristine, rebuilt. Everything was as it had been the day I arrived. The gate. The fog, the keep clean sign hanging crookedly on the fence. A transport truck idled nearby, headlights cutting through the mist. The driver rolled down the window. "You the new custodian?" I looked down at my uniform. The name tag was new. Polished Custodian 84. My throat tightened. The driver tossed a duffel bag onto the slush and said, "Welcome to K17, pal. Watch your step. Floors are freshly cleaned." I glanced toward the building. It looked alive again, lights flickering softly, wind carrying faint echoes through the vents. The same faint shh, shh. Rhythm rolled across the snow. I should have screamed, should have run. But instead I reached down, picked up the broom leaning against the wall and felt it hum faintly in my hands. Warm, familiar. The door hissed open by itself. The same tired soldier, Vasquez, stood there. Except his eyes were wrong, empty, glassy, too still. "Custodian," he said flatly. "Follow me." I nodded, because what else could I do? Inside, the corridors gleamed. The lights hummed. The smell of bleach burned my throat. The maintenance room was exactly as I remembered it. The mop buckets, the racks, the clipboard hanging by the door. I looked down at it and felt my stomach twist. A new rule had been added to the bottom of the list. Printed in bold red letters. Supervise the cycle. The pen hanging beside it was still dripping ink. Vasquez placed a hand on my shoulder. "Shift begins at 0600, he said, voice hollow. "Welcome back, Supervisor." He turned and left, leaving me alone with the hum. I stood there for a long time, staring at the broom in my hand. It felt heavier than before, alive, and when I finally set it against the wall, it didn't fall. It stood upright, balancing perfectly, waiting. From somewhere far above, through the vents, the sweeping started again. Slow, steady, eternal. Shh. I closed my eyes and whispered the only rule that still mattered. Don't sweep the third floor. But the broom was already moving.